before I give you the overall architecture of our new strategy, let me start with a personal note. I will never forget standing in this very room, in this very podium, in March 2016, at the very day where the city of Brussels was brutally and indiscriminately attacked by terrorists. This day crystallized very clearly that we had a sense of security that affects us all, with hundreds of fellow officials and friends in this Eastern week moving to the airport or being in the Brussels metro. This moment was a particularly striking moment, because if anyone ever doubted the need for an EU approach to security, that day, and far too numerous other attacks that took place on European soil before and after that day, those doubts were immediately erased. So we all know that security is a cross-cutting issue which has to take into account almost every sphere of life and policy. We are not starting from scratch. We do had in the previous Commission a security agenda, but we are now trying to increasingly close down the space in which hostile actors can operate. We want also to build resilience against attacks and enhance our response capacity. We are mainly proposing today a new house with a single roof. It lays the foundation of a new security ecosystem that spans across the policy board. It goes well beyond the purview of DGs, ministries, departments, which are traditionally in charge of security, and encompasses instruments from policy areas such as the economy, social affairs, environment, agriculture, finance, transport, infrastructure, education, information, health. All these are building blocks of this new single roof strategy. And this is precisely what the College adopted today. A strategy that seeks to overcome fragmentation across policy silos, but it also to overcome another equally important fragmentation, the false dichotomy between online and offline, between digital and physical threats, and the third fragmentation between internal and external security concerns. Because the reality is that security threats do not respect geographical borders. And these days, physical and digital systems are interdependent. Let me very quickly take you into four families of issues, the building blocks of this new strategy, and then Commissioner Johansson will be more specific on our early harvest proposals. First, critical infrastructure. We do have an existing framework for protecting the resilience of our critical infrastructure, but it's a framework that has not kept pace with the evolving nature of threats. Increasing interdependencies mean that disruption in one sector can immediately have an impact on operations in other. An attack on electricity production would knock out telecommunications, hospitals, banks, airports, while an attack on digital infrastructure would lead to disruptions in networks of power or finance. So we need to urgently address these interconnections and interdependencies with robust critical infrastructure protection. This is why we will bring forward soon modernized legislation on protecting at the same level digital and physical, and we must modernize our legislation where this will mean better cooperation, better information exchange, and a level playing field. This is a work that we will be doing together with Vice President Vestager and Commissioner Breton. Second cluster of concerns, cybercrime. Technology brought new opportunities, but at the same time, huge risks. The dark web is a reality. The cost of cybercrime is expected to reach 5.5 trillion by the end of this year. And the level of cybercrime and the sophistication of it has skyrocketed during the lockdown. We saw scams, we saw ransomware, we saw miracle cures, we saw all sorts of threats. And it is time for the European Union to do more in this field. We will make sure that the current legislation rendering cybercrime a criminal offense will enforce dissuasive sanctions in all member states. And we will launch a reflection on other actions that will help prevent the spread of cybercrime and help citizens and companies to better solutions. And we will work with our agency, ENISA, to build on its recently renewed mandate to do much more and better, and that will happen by the end of the year. Third, hybrid threats. Hybrid threats is something that is happening increasingly often. It's something that affects directly our foreign policy and security. It's something that is being orchestrated by forces and countries who do not want to see European Union succeed, and we will work closely with the High Representative Vice President Borrell to align these internal and external dimensions of interdependence in tackling hybrid threats. And lastly, let me point out that what we're presenting you today will also cover organized crime, which is an area particularly under the responsibility of Commissioner Johansson. She will be able to share with you now more specific proposals on drugs, firearms trafficking, and child sexual abuse online. Let me take the opportunity to say that you see the Commissioner and myself here today, but the Security Union strategy has been a colossal effort that has brought together practically all members of the College, and I'm delighted, and I want to thank publicly all our colleagues for their commitment and their willingness to contribute to this major collective endeavor. A final remark, which I will repeat here, as is something that I said during my confirmation hearing in the European Parliament. All the proposed actions and initiatives that we are envisaging in the field of security union strategy will fully respect fundamental rights and our European values. Those values are the ones that determine our European way of life, and we will under no circumstances sacrifice them on the altar of security. Security, in fact, is a way to protect our human rights and fundamental rights. Security is also a shared responsibility, and we are determined, both the Commissioner, myself, and the College, to work closely with Parliament and the Council and keep them both fully informed and involved through regular Security Union reports and joint debates. In a nutshell, this is what the von der Leyen Commission means and how we translate the Europe that protects. This is the Europe that protects setting for security policy in the 4.5 years to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice President. Commissioner, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, and also thank you, Margaritis, for good cooperation on this. Today, together with the Security Union strategy, we also present three specific proposals. It's the EU strategy to fight child sexual abuse. It's the EU action plan for firearms trafficking, and it's the EU drugs agenda and action plan. And there is urgent need for European response. On child sexual abuse online, the last 5 years, we have seen Europe become the epicenter of hosted materials of child sexual abuse. On drugs, Europe is moving from a consumer region to also being a producer region, resulting in increased influence and reach for organized crime groups. We are exporting drugs from Europe today. And on firearms, we have quite good legislation, but it has not been implemented fully in the EU member states, and there's a lot more to do on this. But I will start with the fight against child sexual abuse and the strategy we are presenting today. Margaritis talked about the fundamental rights. We also have a fundamental obligation to protect children. I think this is both, of course, in real life and online. The child sexual abuse material online is increasing dramatically, exponentially. We have seen since the last 9 years, globally, the rise from 1 million detected materials to 17 million detected materials. In European Union, more than 700,000 detected materials was reported last year. And then, of course, there's also a lot that are not being reported and detected. So, and we also know that the situation has worsened during the pandemic, with a lot of children alone, home, online, but also we can see an increased activity from pedophiles. The online abuses are becoming more sophisticated in sharing, in hiding, and worse, creating new materials. It works like this in these closed communities for pedophiles, that to be able to enter, to be able to look at the materials that they share there, you have to provide new materials. Otherwise, you're not allowed. And that means they have to do new rapes or new videos or new abuses to be able to see the old ones. Last year, we detected 100,000 new videos in the European Union. And additional to that, a lot of pictures, of course. So, of course, we don't know if they've been produced exactly that year, but probably. So this is really, there's real children that are being abused by this. Over the last 5 years, the hosting of the materials has shifted. So now 2/3 of these materials are being hosted in European Union, specifically in the Netherlands. And that's why I'm very happy to have a very good cooperation with the Dutch minister Grapperhaus that is fighting this problem together. But we need to have sharper tools. And the most important is to detect, to report, to remove, and to refer. We are announcing today that next year, the Commission will propose new legislation to make it mandatory for relevant internet and social media messaging companies to detect, to report, and to remove materials, and to refer them to appropriate authorities. Detection of abuse is an essential part of the process because this can lead to victims being saved. And it works like this, that when we got the materials, the reports to Europol, for example, they start investigating and controlling this. And they are able, together with the national police forces, to identify the children being abused right now and being able to save them. And this is really, for example, we had a 9-year-old girl in Romania who'd been abused by her father for more than 1 year that could be saved through this work with Europol and the national police forces. That's why it's so important with the responsibility for the online companies. Their detection and reporting starts the investigation, which lead to the rescue of children and to prosecution of offenders. Recent examples in German case revealing potentially 30,000 suspects and another recent massive investigation in Italy show the value of strong reporting mechanism and quick cooperation. Both these examples show the effectiveness of detection and subsequent reports to the US-based National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, NCMEC. They gather the material and then report it to Europol. Now we propose that also time for us to have the same kind of center to prevent and counter child sexual abuse also in Europe, and to have better coordination and better and faster response and help to member states. And this new center will also work with the expertise of prevention, because this is absolutely the most important to prevent these abuse and rapes from happening in the first place. So this will be a role for the new center, but we will already right now set up or create a prevention network in the European Union. We also need to help victims to support them, because this could be a lifelong trauma, have been to seeing these materials living on the internet a long time after the actual abuse. And then we know that very often the children victims are often being abused by somebody in their family or somebody that they trust. And part of the abuse is just threatening the children not to tell anybody. So this is also an area where we need to do more to create good practice, how children can be able to report these abuse going on. So this was on the strategy on fighting child sexual abuse. We also present today an EU drugs agenda and an action plan. The business of drugs is the biggest resource of money to the organized criminal groups in the European Union. And they use this money to do corruption, to pay for murders, and a lot of other crimes. And this is a huge, huge business. Today we have 5,000 organized crime groups in the European Union. Last year, we were able to seize 100 tons of cocaine. You can imagine how big this is, and of course there's also a lot of drugs that we have not been able to seize. And we have seen now that we are producing the synthetic drugs in a business scale, in an industrial scale in the European Union. So that's why we need to fight this better. So we are presenting also an action plan that we have 53 concrete actions that we will do together to fight the drugs. And finally, also a few words on the EU action plan of firearms trafficking. We have been working successfully together with the Western Balkans to fight firearms trafficking, and we will continue doing that. But today we have 35 million illicit weapons owned by civilians in the European Union. And that's more than that's legally owned by civilians in the European Union. So this is, of course, a very important way also to disrupt the work or the actions for the organized criminal groups. So these are part of what we are presenting today. And I must say that it's very timely to do this because we can see the organized criminal groups and the child sexual abuse have been growing during the pandemic. So it's very timely that we can present these new concrete actions today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now move to your questions. Before we do that, let me remind you that today we have interpretation for you in Swedish, Greek, Italian, Spanish, French, German, and English, so you can ask your questions in those languages if you so wish. We will start with Hans van der Borchelt. Hans, you have the floor.
It is divided between different commissioners, Commissioner Johansson, Commissioner Schinas, but also there is Commissioner Breton involved when it comes to cyber issues or disinformation is something that is with Commissioner Jourova. So just I'm wondering in which sense you're binding these forces together, or whether it is in a certain sense also a problem that we are no longer having a proper security commissioner as before who can oversee all these portfolios together. And just in the same sense, one question, I understood there was a security union task force that had been meeting before, but I've been informed that it hasn't been meeting since December. So maybe you can just elaborate on why this task force is not meeting or when it will meet again. Thank you.
Yes, the security union strategy architecture we're presenting today is described as a mandate given to me in the mission letter that the President sent to me before appointing the Commission, or upon rather the appointment of the Commission. This is a new setup. There is no security union commissioner in the von der Leyen Commission because there is security union vice president in the von der Leyen Commission, and our job was to present, as we're doing today, this silo-breaking, single-roof strategy that will host all the rooms, if I may say so, that we will be constructing under this common roof. Commissioner Johansson, being in charge of internal affairs and homeland security, if I may say, she will be responsible for building one of the major rooms, but as you rightly pointed out, Margrethe Vestager and Thierry Breton will work with us on the cybersecurity aspects of it. High Representative Vice President will do the same on the hybrid threats. Vera Jourova and Didier Reinders will meet with us on the disinformation plan. Kadri Simpson and Adrian Valian will work together on critical infrastructures. So this is how this system will work. So I'm particularly happy with the method. We had 3 meetings of the project group of the Security Union Commissioners. I was delighted to see all my colleagues genuinely committed to this collective endeavor. And I'm sure that what we are presenting today in a way will be the first chapter of the Security Union book that we'll be writing in the next 4 years and a half.
Thank you. Nicolas Gros. Nicolas, nous ne t'entendons pas.
Allô, allô?
Oui, voilà, maintenant c'est bon.
Est-ce que vous m'entendez là mieux?
On t'entend, vas-y.
Ça va bien? Oui, j'avais une question en français, plus particulièrement pour le commissaire Schinas. Sur la question de sécurité intérieure et extérieure, on assiste en ce moment au large de la Grèce et de Chypre.
Excuse-moi, Nicolas, mais je soupçonne que tu es dans une zone quelque part qui n'est pas encore bien couverte par les technologies mobiles. Donc, nous n'entendons pas ta question. Donc, nous allons, si tu veux bien, passer à quelqu'un d'autre. Je te suggère de m'écrire ta question par écrit. On essaiera d'y répondre de cette manière-là, dans le chat de l'application. Let's move to Maria Psara, please. Maria.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, okay. I have 2 questions. One is really relative to what we are discussing, and the second is not. So I will try the first in English because it's for both of them, and the second in Greek, if I may.
Go ahead.
The first one, it's about the in practical terms. What should we expect as next steps? Because I haven't really understood the part of the roadmap, if you could describe to us. And then the question in Greek, it's είναι για την Αγία Σοφιά και σήμερα γίνεται η πρώτη προσευχή μετά τη μετατροπή της Αγίας Σοφιάς ως τζαμί. Θα ήθελα από τον Αντιπρόεδρο Σχοινά ένα σχόλιο, μια αντίδραση, όχι μόνο ως Επιτροπή, αλλά και ως Έλληνα Επιτρόπου. Ευχαριστώ πολύ.
Okay, on the next steps, I think the first bunch of very concrete actions the Commissioner just presented for child sexual abuse, we have arms trafficking, and of course the issue of, what's the third one? Sorry, drugs and firearms. Then, on each of the building blocks that we're having in front of us, we already have included in the Commission work program for this year very specific initiatives, especially coming on the digital side of the Security Union, with the revision of the NIS directive, with lots of action coming up on cybersecurity, with very detailed legislative proposals on updating our legislation on physical infrastructure. So today you are witnessing the start, and this will be spelled out in the months and the years to come, starting from this year. Now, on Hagia Sophia, ως Έλληνας αισθάνομαι πικραμένος και θυμωμένος. Είναι μια δύσκολη μέρα και είμαι σίγουρος ότι δεν τη νιώθω μόνο εγώ έτσι. Νομίζω ότι η Τουρκία πρέπει μια φορά πρέπει να αποφασίσει ποια θα είναι η ευρύτερη γεωπολιτική της στόχευση και με ποιον ακριβώς θα θέλει να πορευθεί στο μέλλον. Αν θέλει να πορευθεί με την Ευρώπη, αν θέλει να συνεχίσει σε αυτό το δρόμο της σύμφυσης με τις δικές μας αρχές και τις δικές μας αξίες, αυτό που συμβαίνει σήμερα στην Αγία Σοφία σίγουρα είναι η λάθος αρχή.
Merci. Nous allons continuer la conférence de presse. Je propose de procéder d'abord avec les questions qui ont trait au sujet du jour, c'est-à-dire la stratégie pour une union de la sécurité. Et nous prendrons éventuellement d'autres questions à la fin. Donc Nicolas, nous prendrons ta question un peu plus tard. Passons maintenant à Mose.
Hello, thank you, Eric. Yes, I would like to ask a question in Swedish, if I may, to Commissioner Johansson. It's about the trafficking drugs. Hej, Commissioner Johansson. Nu nämnde att det skett en ökning, inte bara av konsumtionen, men också av försäljning och export av drugs, av narkotika och läkemedel här från Europa. Och jag undrar om det stämmer, om ni kan kommentera det här, om det är så att om det är möjligt att köpa till och med receptbelagda läkemedel på internet nu för tiden, och i så fall om det är ett kryphål i lagstiftningen som borde täppas till. Tack så mycket.
Tack så mycket. Man kan väl säga att vi tittar ju på alla delar av drogmarknaden och också på receptbelagda läkemedel. Och det kan inte uteslutas att det kan behövas ny lagstiftning, vilket i första hand är ett arbete för varje land att säkerställa. Men det vi kan bidra med på europeisk nivå, det är ju framförallt att vi har ett ökat polissamarbete och kan hitta de här kryphålen. Och vi ser hur man använder det här sättet att vanlig post för att skicka droger och det har ökat på det sättet.
Sorry, apologies for that. We now move to Thomas Guczka.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon. I have a question that goes to Commissioner Johansson, and it's on the child sexual abuse strategy or fight against that, of course. The center that you intend to create, the new center, when you say it could receive reports of child abuse from companies, which companies exactly do you mean? And related to this, how, in your view, should this new center be financed? Are you thinking about contributions, financial contributions, for instance, from platforms? So are they meant to finance it? Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Today, it's voluntary for online companies to detect and report and remove this content. Most of them globally report to NCMEC, the US-based organization, and then they report further on to, for example, Europol. Today, about 80% of the reported materials comes from Facebook, mainly from Messenger. So they are really good at detecting the materials online there. We are now going to present a legislation to make it mandatory for internet companies to detect, report, remove, and refer this content. And this is a very important step, and that's what we announced today, that we are going to present this new proposal next year. For the center, we are of course going to do an impact assessment and some studies before we concretely establish it. And that has to look into, of course, also things like financing and other kinds of how we ought to organize the center.
Thank you. We move to Catherine Fiori.
Hello, hi. Commissioners, I just wanted to ask, in the structure that you showed us, it didn't really show the role of anti-moneying side of the Commission, sort of financial regulation, and that might be explicit in the communications, but I was wondering if you've got anything to say about that, because obviously it's the proceeds of crime that really make it worthwhile and where it will hit those who are involved the hardest. And also, is it in the EU's general interest to look at things like unexplained wealth orders, where people have to reveal the sources of wealth that they have if it isn't clear, and put the burden on those who don't seem to have any obvious explanation for their wealth. And it seems that this would be extremely useful in also the rule of law and helping ensure that there is helping fight corruption more generally within the EU.
On financial crime and money laundering, this is of course part of the Security Union strategy, and we have already announced actions both for legislation and for enforcing the existing legislation. So this is already included, and I also mentioned it in my presentation a bit earlier. So yes, this is part of our work on security.
If I might add, so it was only 1 month ago since I was in The Hague, an opening of the special expert center at Europol dealing with especially the financial markets and banks to investigate.
Thank you. We move to Samuel Stolten.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can, Samuel. Go ahead.
Yes, we can, Samuel. Go ahead. Wonderful. I have a question on the strategy and how it highlights the importance of boosting cybersecurity for critical national infrastructure. Of course, in the light of recent cyber attacks to EU hospitals, particularly with regards to the Czech Republic. I'd like to know a bit more about the nature of these attacks that we've recently seen to critical national infrastructures, particularly where are these attacks coming from? It has been previously suggested that China could be behind some of these attacks. Is that the case? And also, more specifically, what measures is the Commission going to propose to improve the security of critical national infrastructures?
Okay, I'm not very sure whether I should discuss in the Commission press room all the details of these very sensitive issues. What I can tell you is that this is precisely to build up our resilience and our response capacity against these threats that we are now moving very actively and much more than in the past into the alignment between physical and digital threats. And we shall be coming out with very concrete proposals later this year. We are working very actively with our colleagues at the EAS on hybrid threats. I said that many of these attacks are, of course, state-sponsored, and we are not naive, but we would like to reserve our capacity to assess, respond, and react where it matters. And I'm not sure that the press room of the Commission is the best forum for that. What the press room of the Commission is very adequate for is to reiterate our determination to be very, very forceful and very, very eager to fight these threats.
I can answer the question on the critical infrastructure. Today, the existing legislation only covers transport and energy sectors. And of course, we need to broaden that to a lot of other sectors like health that you mentioned, that banks, there could be other sectors that really need to be covered. We also need to deepen it, so to say, because the kind of threats could be physical, but they can also be digital. So this is also the kind of broadening in two different dimensions that we're going to propose in the new legislation.
Thank you very much. I come back to the question which had been raised by Nicolas Gros. Question en français sur... voilà, je l'ai ici, pardon. Je voulais avoir l'opinion du vice-président Schinas sur les tensions au large de la Grèce et Chypre avec la Turquie actuellement. Le jour est particulièrement important avec l'anniversaire de la fin du régime des colonels en Grèce.
Bon, Nicolas, ce que je vais te dire, c'est que la sécurité au périmètre de nos frontières, c'est un objectif, un rôle pour l'Europe d'assumer. C'est à nous de le faire et nous n'allons pas déléguer notre sécurité, la sécurité de notre continent et la souveraineté de nos États membres à d'autres acteurs. Je salue le rôle de la chancelière Merkel et du président Macron qui, les deux, très activement, sont beaucoup investis ces derniers jours pour contribuer à de la désescalade et d'assouplir les tensions à la Méditerranée de l'Est. Je dis à ma réponse antérieure que c'est à la Turquie maintenant de décider une fois pour toutes sur son choix géopolitique et afin de compter de quel côté de l'histoire veut-elle faire partie. Et je pense que d'ici jusqu'au Conseil informel des ministres des Affaires intérieures à Gymnich, qui est prévu pour la fin août, nous aurons l'opportunité de travailler pour diffuser ces tensions, assurer, réitérer l'importance de l'Europe comme une force de stabilité, une force de sécurité dans cette région très volatile. Et nous avons aussi discuté au collège sur la base d'une information que le haut représentant vice-président Borrell nous a présentée avec ses contacts à lui. Comme vous voyez, l'Europe travaille activement, œuvre activement pour promouvoir la paix et la stabilité. Et c'est aux autres aussi de comprendre que cette détermination doit être rencontrée avec une certaine réciprocité.
Merci. Nous passons à Mathieu Bion.
Oui, bonjour.
Bonjour.
Vous m'entendez?
Oui, absolument, Mathieu.
C'est ma question sur l'accord sur le budget de l'UE 2021-2027. Je voulais savoir si la Commission allait publier la ventilation par État membre du plan de relance européen. Merci.
Merci pour cette question, Mathieu. Nous n'avons pas encore les estimations définitives en ce qui concerne la partie du plan de relance, c'est-à-dire le Recovery and Resilience Facility, à mettre à votre disposition, mais nous le ferons dès que c'est le cas. Je vois, Nicolas, que tu souhaites retenter de poser une question. Voyons si cela marche. Nicolas, press speak. Ça ne marche pas, donc nous sommes à la fin de cette conférence de presse. Merci beaucoup et je souhaite à ceux d'entre vous qui partent en vacances aujourd'hui d'excellents congés. Nous retrouverons les autres en salle de presse lundi. Merci et bon week-end.